Let's retrace our steps. Harper is sleeping with her employee. She has slept with James Ashford, one of her investors. Not great behavior.
No.
Welcome back, everyone, to And Just Like Yap. I am Andi.
I'm Caroline.
And we are here for the season 4 premiere of HBO's finance, sex, drugs show industry. It is a wild ride already. What are your initial thoughts, Caroline, on the season 4 premiere of Industry?
God, I've missed them. I've missed them so much. If you also loved Succession like I did, this fills that hole.
So let's jump right into it. We see a guy like getting dressed in his apartment, and it turns out to be sweet little Charlie, the guy from Stranger Things. And we also see another new addition to the cast, Kiernan Shipka. We have a series of shots of like these two people going about a day and night. It makes me very, very nervous about what is about to happen because he's like watching her as she's at her office. He's watching her at this bar. He like purposely goes up to her and tries to engage her in conversation, and it feels shady and weird. And then classic 20s behavior, drinks after work turns into a level of partying that would put me in the hospital. But we have a very relevant song here. It is True Faith by New Order, which you mentioned to me was also in
American Psycho when they're in the bar. So it's like, I feel like that was extremely intentional, to use that specific song at this point when they're in the bar. You're like, okay, we're not introing with two characters we're connected with yet. Like, you would expect, like, we're going to intro with Yasmin and Harper. We have two new characters we have no connection to yet, and they do such a good job of flipping things on its head of, like, what the twist is going to be.
It feels very ominous. They end up back at her place, and it's a little more tame. They're having wine. He's like, why? How can you possibly afford to own a place like this? She kind of brushes it off. He's like, don't you have to sleep in tomorrow? And she's like, no, I get to stay in because my boss flies to Africa basically weekly. Will become relevant soon.
Later, yep.
There are some lines, like this line, my ex said my pussy looks like pink bubblegum, that I'm like, ah!
This is like the first of many lines.
This show has always been very intense in nature. The characters make decisions and say things that your jaw is on the floor because of their level of like intensity, depravity, what have you. And it is the next morning in this gorgeous, gorgeous apartment. And here's this nervous man next to a bowl of fruit. And she waltzes out and is like, if you told me your name, I forgot it. She seems pretty chill. It doesn't seem like anything nefarious happened. He's Jim from Financial Digest. She clocks who he is and realizes like, I only responded to your email as a professional fucking courtesy. Like, even if you're a journalist, following a woman home while she is incapacitated, not even remotely okay. No. And he's hounding her, like, I could get a quote and we don't have to attribute it to you. Like, you can be anonymous. He's clearly working on something to do with the business that this character works for. And he's like, I've been talking to your boss's old assistant. Do you know where she is? She's been NDA'd to fuck. We don't know what the company is. We don't have any more information. But this guy seems to be going after that company and is writing some kind of article on it. And of course, she grabs a knife and is like, I will fucking cut you, and like chases him out of the apartment. Sally Draper, there she is. Yes, she went from smoking cigs to wielding knives. Yeah. It is crazy to see her on our screens. I feel like this is a very purposeful casting choice in the sense that TV viewers grew up watching Sally Draper, because a lot of industry is about like young people finding their footing in the business world and making a lot of mistakes. So like, obviously she's not playing Sally Draper, but it does something to the viewer to be like, oh my God, Sally Draper is now in like one of her first major jobs. You get what I'm saying?
But like becoming an adult, because she went from Sally to Sabrina on Netflix and then this. So it's like, it's a very interesting career progression of like the roles that she's picking, and I'm like, I like where she's going and like the people that she's choosing to work with. It's very interesting.
Okay, we see Harper. Harper is back. This outfit and she is strutting.
This sequence from her exiting the car and walking through, I was like, inject this in my veins. This is like what it must feel like to do MDMA. Because I just feel like I could run through a wall with her in this 4-piece suit. I want to know who designed it because it looks like, I don't know if it's Tom Brown.
It does look kind of Tom Brown.
Yeah, but it's like very like so chic. Harper was 22 in season 1. And like to think of that like little baby in season 1 and now we're about to see she's turning 30.
We do see that she gets a birthday card from her mom, a happy 30th. It is absolutely lifeless and actually seems a little bit like a dig because it says, looks like you got everything you wanted, best mom. So less of a happy birthday card and more of a fuck you card. We know that Harper has had issues with her family in the past. She also ended the previous season saying she did want to go back to New York, but here we are after a time jump, which I believe is a little over a year based on context clues.
Yeah.
And she's still not back in New York. So something's still brewing with Harper's dysfunctional family. And it turns out we are at Mostyn Asset Management and Harper is running the fund that she discussed with Otto, but it is in a much less like badass, radical, independent way than she imagined, and more we're in a building that looks like Parliament and we're all wearing like Argyle and ascots and like making careful financial decisions, which is not what Harper signed on for. We find out Otto has retired, which is part of the reason why she's being middle managed by whatever this dude's name is, I don't remember. And she's being like heavily controlled and not really allowed to have credence to make her decisions as she was promised. We find out that the short that they're currently working on, again, very current, very present, has to do with OnlyFans and then a fake company for the purposes of the show called Siren. And it's spooking the investors because obviously it has to do with like
sex.
You know, sex. And we find out that the UK government is pushing through an online safety bill. And the reason why Harper is trying to short these companies like OnlyFans and Siren is because she believes that this bill is going to drop the stock price.
Yeah, and it's an actual bill that passed in the UK in, I think, 2023-24. And I did a light, quick read, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this a lot more in the episodes to come, because it seems like at face value, the bill is just about preventing kids from accessing pornography and things like that. But the greater implications is then how does it affect like freedom of speech and things like that, and like what you're able to say and like access online.
What I thought was interesting, so like in the world of industry, the Labor government is in power, and the Labor government is comparable, it's not a direct parallel, but it's comparable to like Democratic leadership in the US.
Yeah.
Like it's supposed to be progressive and liberal. It's the Labor Party. It's like the working person's party. So like, yeah, as you said, at face value, this seems like a progressive bill. But as we know in America, and I'm sure it's exactly the same in Daddy UK, that is where we came from after all. Even our progressive leaders do not focus on passing the most progressive legislation or making the most progressive choices. So yes, it's paralleling what goes on in the UK, obviously, but it's very, very relevant to present day America as well, the hell that you and I both reside in. Quabina says something really, really stupid, and he's making the case like, well, they do coerce the vulnerable, and he looks right at Sweetpea, and she's like, do you want to say something to my face? We did find out last season that Sweetpea was on what we're now calling Siren because Rishi is watching it in the bathroom while his nose is bleeding and he's holding his baby, which is one of the most upsetting things I've ever seen on television. I thought this was really interesting because that seemed kind of like a throwaway, just like character building device for Sweetpea's character of like, she contains multitude, she's working in finance, but you know, she also has an OnlyFans. And I didn't think that detail was going to be explored in a larger way, but I love that we're doing that now because it is the world of industry. Like, people are making their coin that way, and it's problematic in some ways. Yeah. And also, I have to say, we did see Sweetpea has some sort of black eye in the trailer, and
I know.
It makes me really nervous about where this is going, but I am glad that the show is talking about this. Yeah. So Sweetpea confronts him because obviously some level of her being on one of these sites has been exposed. And then Kwabena continues to put his foot in his mouth, saying, I don't consider myself a prolific masturbator. I mean, this is just highlighting that this character is a young little baby. Like, oh, yeah. I think of him the way, like, we saw the grads at Pierpoint when the show first started.
Yeah,
like
very different dialogue than Ted Lasso, which is what he was on before this.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we cut to a couple other new characters. And of course, it is two dudes talking about trying a semen retention streak. Cal Penn, there is Cal Penn, not getting stoned and going to White Castle. He
or on House.
Or on House, yeah. He is headed into his corporate office talking about doing some no fapping. The next line he says is no fap, no cap, which I was like, oh my God. They're headed into Tender, that they are the CEO and CFO of, and they are discussing how this new labor government legislation might be affecting them. Cal Penn's character, Jonah, is kind of just like pushing it aside of like, they're just on a crusade. It's their first 100 days. They're like trying to make an impact. Yeah. It's like not a big deal. Like, let's not worry about it. And it's very clear that their relationship is that Whitney, the CFO, played by Max Mignella, is the one who's sort of trying to move the company forward, and Jonah is very happy with the status quo because it's making them a lot of money. And he mentions, you pushed us into Africa. So now we know this is the character. This is Haley's boss that she mentions goes to Africa every week. This is the guy. We still don't know why, but this is the guy.
This was like triggering me on so many levels. It's really interesting watching the push-pull of the two of them, because I feel like I experienced this a lot at the company I worked at, where it's like you get successful from this like one great idea that they had, and then they're like, okay, well that's like fine, but that's like not sexy anymore. So we want to now shift into this other thing that's like so much riskier and can like tank the entire company.
And we learn later that this company went public about 2 years ago, so they are no longer a startup. Whitney is trying to take the company more seriously and in a different direction than it initially was going in. And we have Jonah saying, I'm sorry, does my office like smelling bad? Is that antithetical to executive function? Keep this in your brains. Gonna be important later. He's asking his assistant, do we have any boba? This man, they're painting a very specific picture of this character from the jump. Rishi! Oh my God. I was relieved to see him, but let's not forget that the last time we saw him, his wife's head
was in a birthday cake.
Exploding into a birthday cake. We don't get a ton of details about what's going on with him. He's coming into a pub and he says like around
his
for
head
everybody.
Is shaved.
His head is shaved. He's coming into a pub saying, round for everyone, I've just been promoted. And like at first you're like, oh, maybe things are going well for Rishi. And then you can't quite get a footing of what's going on. It turns out he's actually crashing a wake. He is talking to the guy who is responsible for speech writing for this politician, Jennifer Bevan, who's going to be the one pushing this online safety bill. And so we're like, what's he doing here? Rishi's chatting him up and is saying like they're going to be logging our bowel movements soon. Like they want to have like their hands in everything. They want to have their eyes on everything. And this other woman who this guy's friends with calls it an Orwellian nightmare. And as soon as this woman walks away, this guy is like, oh, she's got a doppelganger on Siren, shows it to Rishi and says, this woman redefines the concept of big naturals. Men should not be allowed to open their mouths.
It just shows literally the second like a woman leaves a conversation, like what men like this think of women. And it's just like, we're not human. We're cattle. We're like just objects as a means to an end for their pleasure.
Yes, this very smart woman just referred to something as an Orwellian nightmare. She knows stuff, but let's talk about her boobs.
Her big naturals.
We've been talking about Siren already. We've been talking about this legislation, and now immediately 2 men are left alone, and the first thing that comes up is Siren. So it is rampant. It's like wildfire. And Rishi asks to see it again and carefully watches as this guy puts in his phone password. Rishi like lets the mask drop like a little bit that he's just trying to go along to get along with this guy, and I just love it that he's like, yeah, milkers, son. Like it's so awful.
I know.
But like he steals this guy's phone, hacks into it with the password he just watched, and finds the draft of this speech that Jennifer Bevins is going to be giving, and of course takes a picture of it. So he's doing some espionage. He's doing the law, as the women of All's Fair would say.
Yeah, this is exactly what Dina Standish does on a regular basis.
And then we find out that Rishi is doing this espionage for Harper, which makes sense because where we left her at the end of last season is that she wanted this shorts fund, and she made it very clear with Otto Mawson, like, that she was okay doing shady shit to get the information that she needed to make her shorts work. Rishi says in this conversation, though, this seems a little desperate even for you. And we find out Rishi read the thing he took a picture of, the speech, and Siren is going to be named specifically in Parliament. So that is like good knowledge for the short that their stock will probably drop. And Harper mentions, because Rishi had listed her as kin on the rehab that he went to, that she paid off whatever debts he had at the rehab. And Rishi very sheepishly says, I wasn't even actually trying to do anything. So alluding to he may have either tried to kill himself or overdosed. So we're finding out more of the fallout of what happened at the end of last season.
It's interesting because if we think about where these two left off at the end of season 3, we had when he went in for what he thought was an interview for Harper's short, and then humiliates him with Sweetpea and what he had said about her. So now it's showing that even though she humiliated him, he's beholden to her, in a serf sort of way. He's among the lowest in society because there's nowhere for him to go.
Yeah, she hands him a big wad of cash, and he mentions I can't even get through a cursory background check, probably because he's in so much debt. And Harper mentions if you don't have money, society will kill you before you're dead.
That line I thought was so incredible because it's true. It really and I think about that now with the level of layoffs that are happening with AI and things like that in in our country, and how I think this is going to become something that's more rampant, even though people may not want to acknowledge it. But it is this sense of if you don't have a job, if you don't have a plan, then society will beat you down very quickly.
I mean, Rishi made a bunch of mistakes. Yeah. I'm not saying he deserves what he got, but he did make a bunch of mistakes. But late stage capitalism is inhumane. It's deeply, deeply inhumane. People are of no value unless they have money. This is a commercial for Tinder that somebody made. It is super, super generic, super vague. Very much we care about you. Bank with us. Don't you feel good? Yay, the robots are analyzing your worth in the world. And the first thing out of Jonah's mouth after the video ends is that there are a lot of Asians in the video. And everybody, of course, is oh my God.
I'm triggered by the half vest over the button down on the guy on the far right. Because that's that is the finance bro uniform. If it's spring, men are out with their half zip Patagonia over a light crisp blue button down as they're walking to Sweet Green on their lunch to talk about their corporate smack, and then going back to their desk, talking shares, talking their stands, talking about sell side, talking about IPO, SEO. It's just it's so much.
It's sick.
Yeah.
So, this meeting, the mood gets very uncomfortable. Jonah is vaping in the meeting. So, Whitney is trying to sell him on, this is what the new generation of Tinder looks like. So we find out, Whitney really wants to make Tinder this full-service banking app and not just a payment platform. And Jonah brings up, are you forgetting about the fact that 23% of our income is because we are the payment platform for quote-unquote alternative merchants, which he then very eloquently redefines as sucking, fucking, and rolling the dice, meaning pornography and gambling. As inevitable as death and taxes, there's always going to be money there. And he says jerking off is recession-proof. He's not wrong.
I can't wait to see how quickly this falls apart. It's very Social Network 2.0. It's very...
Yes! Oh my God. I was going to say this whole thing feels very, very Social Network. There's definitely an Aaron Sorkin element in here. So, in the middle of Whitney trying to be people are not going to take a mortgage with us if they see that we are the payment processor for like these very, very risque, for lack of a better word, videos. And then, of course, Jonah says something else off color that he can only get hard from black on black action. We are painting a very specific picture of this man, as I said, who doesn't give a fuck, says whatever he wants, like feels like he makes an impact by like saying inflammatory things. Like, we're not supposed to like this character. And he keeps repeating, we are not a bank. And then a guy who we haven't really met yet, off to the side, who we later find out is named Ferdinand, says maybe Tender shouldn't be satisfied simply by being the PayPal of Bukkake, which is the title of the episode.
Incredible line of dialogue. That I was like, yeah, that's what they are.
Yes. And then, of course, I love this. In another cloud of vape juice. Write that down.
Yeah.
Whitney is once again saying, like, this new vision that I have for Tender, like, does not include these more nefarious sites. Jonah's trying to make the point, like, you don't always need to be disrupting. Like, we don't need fucking artisanal olive oil delivered through your letterbox. Yeah, so once again, Jonah's like, can't we just continue being very good at what we're doing? And then Whitney tries to win the argument by lowering his voice and saying, you need to be really careful about the things that you say in the office, which is true, but he's clearly using it sort of as a tactic in this moment to win the argument. Clearly, Whitney Halberstram went to the Miranda Priestley School of Management because he knocks over a chair and then yells, Haley, chair! And this is where we find out that Kiernan Shipka, from the beginning, is Haley, as we said, we alluded to with the Africa thing. Whitney is her boss. She comes in to pick up the chair. She runs in right away to pick up the chair. We are watching this House of Commons situation back at Mostyn Asset Management, and Jennifer Bevan is about to speak, and as she goes up to speak, Harper tells Kobina, find me all the borrow you can on Siren. Oh boy, I had to spend a lot of time understanding how shorts work, but I got there eventually.
Have you seen The Big Short?
I fell asleep during it.
I mean, it's gambling for for a company to fail.
Yes, absolutely. I understand that now. It was the whole borrowing aspect that kind of confused me. Ultimately, for this show, you just have to understand this good, this bad. Jennifer Bevans does specifically mention Siren while she's speaking, and lo and behold, the stock price starts to tank. And Harper is very, very smug about it. She's like, oh, is that right? Everybody's watching this happen. We seem to get some like looks from people of like, okay, maybe this bitch knows what she's doing, or like, how did she know? Mm-hmm. Kobina wants to take profit. He wants to get them out. And she's like, nope, hold the position. Sweetpea pipes up and is like, we're not seat of our pants traders anymore. Like, this isn't what we do here.
Yeah.
But Harper ignores her, says we have a short, it's working. And then as her like little babysitter guy walks out, she like smirks and giggles and pops her gum. Like classic Harper. Like, she always is too smug for her own good when things are going well for her. I had to take a screenshot of this because Whitney is on the phone with somebody and wants to be seated next to Jennifer Bevans at some event. And mentions, if you sit me next to Stephen Fry again, I'll be really
strays,
upset.
Our king catching strays.
I know. Jim and I are watching him currently on UK Traders, and he's just so delightful.
He's a sweetie.
And I was like, oh my God, if this character were sat next to Stephen Fry would be like, oh, well, Siren, actually, did you know that sirens are usually thought of as mermaids, but they were actually bird women?
I would love to sit next to Stephen Fry at a dinner. Like, you wouldn't be able to pull me away.
No, I would change seats to sit next to Stephen Fry at a dinner party. Are you kidding? We find out that Yaz is the one on the other end of the line, and she is working on a seating chart for this event. And of course, she has her incredibly stylish assistant working with her. I really want to hear from this character. I hope that we do.
From the interview I read, this was actually her wedding. So we've passed the wedding from the two of them, and this is her wedding planner helping her plan the party.
Got it. I did at first think that this was a wedding seating chart situation, and I think we were supposed to think that because we're still not clear at this point what exactly the time jump is. And Yaz uses the leverage that she's getting from the seating chart, saying, like, I want to keep the conversation about Henry's future alive. So she wants Henry Muck working at yet another startup. We don't know what's going on with him yet, but Yaz is the one pulling all the strings, as I'm sure knew were going to happen, because Henry is a hapless dilettante.
Yep.
So little Lord Farquaad here says that Jonah is not a serious person and needs to be dealt with. And Whitney's like, but our friendship. We see that Yaz has put Henry's seating card to the side, so he will not be attending the event. Very ominous. We don't know more about that yet, but there's trouble in paradise, as we all could have predicted. Whitney takes a meeting with Siren and says that we're not going to be their payment processor anymore. And this conversation was so funny, because all of the business speak among, like, what they're actually talking about. So, like, this guy who I assume is, like, the CEO or CFO of Siren is like, well, I'm sorry, what actually counts as pornography? Do feet count, by way of example? The eternal question. And the question that I ask myself on a weekly basis is, should I just do feet on the internet? Every woman asks herself that question on a regular basis.
Yeah, and don't post it on your Instagram for free. Always, like,
no
do
free
a little
feet.
thing over no free feet. But also, I also loved the note that they're like, oh, no, we're an online subscription aggregate. Like, that was their way of, like, turning around as well. I was like, yeah, this is, like, corporate speak of, like, manipulating, like, what the product, like, we all know what the product is, but, like, your way of justifying that this is, like, a moral company that you work with.
And so they're going to part ways. Tender is going to stop processing their payments. We find out who the fuck this guy is. It's Ferdinand, the CFO of IBM Bauer Bank.
And it's interesting, so, because this is, like, a very normal startup IPO company thing where you have, like, an angel investor. They have a lot of other money. They get to be on the board and have their way more with the company than you think without having an official role. And I think a lot about, I don't know if you read any of the things with Elizabeth Holmes and I can't think of Theranos. Because they talk about Henry Kissinger was a role like this on the board with Theranos, where basically he put, like, hundreds of millions of dollars in the company, and Elizabeth would basically go to him and he'd give her, like, money nonstop. But because of that, he would have a huge say in the company and, like, the direction of that. So this is, like, a very, like, standard thing where you're like, wait, I thought I was dealing with you. No, you're actually dealing with the puppet who, like, gives the money to them and tells them, like, how they see the direction of the company going in the way that they want it to work.
Yeah, and Ferdinand mentions that he has a 6% stake in Tender.
Yeah.
Jonah's not in this meeting, and these guys are surprised to be meeting with this guy and, like, don't understand why he's talking to them like an executive director. So something's going on.
A coup.
I took this screenshot, though, mainly because these table and chairs are very iconic in the world of, like, furniture design. They're by a designer called Eero Saarinen. The reason I know that is because there was a lounge at my college that had these chairs in them, and they were, like, a huge deal. They're super uncomfortable, but they are, like, a staple of, like, mid-century modern design. And if you look closely, the mid-century modern design in this office is, like, crazy. And it gives it kind of like a Mad Men feel almost. And, like, this place does seem as toxic. Whitney enters his office. It looks like, I love it. His shoes are off. He's got a mini fridge. Like, once again, we're painting this character in a very specific way. And Whitney is like, by the way, just fired Siren. Things are happening that you are not aware of. And Jonah's like, what the fuck? I'm the CEO. And he said, of a publicly traded company, so fucking act like it. And he's shouting this in front of everybody. Nothing is hidden here. And this is where my spidey sense started to tingle. Is he trying to set Jonah up? Like, yes, we know that Jonah already looks bad, but why did he have this fight publicly in front of other employees? When Jonah mentions, like, there are a lot of Asians in the ad, which is obviously a very inappropriate thing to say, did Whitney make the ad that way specifically because he knew Jonah would notice that and say something like that? Is he provoking him to look worse? And I think the answer is yes.
I mean, it's Housewives 101, baby. Like, you provoke them.
Now, of course, because she's Harper Stern, she is sleeping with one of her employees because she's a mess and can't do anything that isn't a totally bad idea. And he, like, interrupts them having sex because he's, like, preoccupied about him putting his foot in his mouth with Sweetpea yesterday. We learn a little bit more about that. You're welcome for... You're welcome for the censorship because Jim probably wasn't going to be able to leave this in the edit otherwise.
No. Oh my God.
Yeah, Harper mentions, like, whoever forwarded the leak of Sweetpea on Siren is fucking complicit. So it was leaked. That is how people know that she was on Siren publicly. Once again, making me really nervous about the black eye thing that we saw in the trailer. But that is quickly overshadowed by the fact that one of their, like, main investors filed a redemption to pull their capital, meaning
Lily Lara.
They want to take their money out of the fund because of the way Harper is managing it. She freaks out, runs downstairs. God, her apartment is nice. It's got stairs in it. Grabs her laptop, brings it up to Quibina and is like, take this down. I'm gating the fund. Which means she is putting a hold on it so that nobody can take their money out of it. And he is shocked. He tries to convince her not to do that. He's like, you're lying about, like, the fund's prospects. We have yet to have an idea that's, like, truly broke out. So we're come to find out that, like, Harper's kind of flailing a little bit. It's not just that she's being overmanaged. She's...
Right.
This maybe just isn't working out.
I know.
Okay. James Ashford is such a funny character to me because he keeps coming back and, like, he, like, kind of doesn't really... matter. Like,
I know.
We only ever hear from him, like, when he, like, barges in because he's upset about something going on wrong with his money and then he leaves. But he makes a much larger impact in this scene. He comes in, he's upset about the fund being gated. Harper's trying to explain, like, the fund isn't doing well because it's not what I was originally promised to do.
Right.
James Ashford makes the point, well, the reason that he's not letting you do what you want to do and, like, get involved in, like, seedier looking things is because Otto, now that he's retired, is trying to get a seat in the House of Lords. Because of course he is. And he's like, it's probably not going to look good if he has this, like, risky shorts fund that's getting involved in seedy stuff because the House of Lords Appointment Commission has a vetting process. Sweetpea and Quibina are obviously eavesdropping on all of this. And then James Ashford starts repeating the word sesquipedalian, which ironically means too many syllables and too involved. He does not look like a well man. Harper! Another explosive play from Harper. Says this all because you couldn't make me come. So now, let's retrace our steps. Harper is sleeping with her employee. She has slept with James Ashford, one of her investors. Not great behavior.
No.
But we're starting to see that, like, things are not working out in Harper's world and she's not getting the, like, chaos that she craves from trading and is instead, I guess, seeking it out in her sex life. He's still stuck on this word. And she even says, if you're going to have a stroke, go outside of my office. There's no time. He crashes right into the glass table. This was shocking. This was just absolutely crazy. And of course, Harper's immediate reaction is that this is inconvenient.
It's also like, well, it plays a callback to the pilot. I think about the character that dies on the toilet, and it shows this sense of, like, there's no mortality.
Everybody's kind of freaking out and is like, we're sending our, like, investors into the hospital. Like, if you have no impulse control, Harper, why are you managing other people's money? Otto's on the line. I've got Patrick. So that's not good. Daddy Otto summons Harper to the House of
and his
Lords.
Best King George from Hamilton costume.
Yes,
like
100,000%. British government and law, why are you so unserious? Why do you make them wear such silly little costumes? And he's like, I'm currently swearing my allegiance to His Majesty the King. So Otto is, you know, trying to belittle Harper and reprimand her for her behavior by saying, you are in an enviable position for a woman of your age. Age seems to be a big thing here. Like, Harper just turned 30. And she's trying to make the point, like, you hired me because I'm good at what I do. And Otto, ooh, this was so villainous, is like, I hired you as a face. So he just wanted to look more progressive, and he wanted a puppet that could do whatever he wanted. And she was like, oh, so you can continue being a crook. And then this was dark in this incredible shot, a crook anointed by the king, because y'all, that is how government works. Yeah. It's powerful people who do bad things, but they're allowed to do it because they're powerful. And then he goes on to say some absolutely vile shit, that he called a subordinate the R word, and nobody flinched, and he said, I might do it again tomorrow.
And I have to say, I don't know if you had this reaction, because I saw One Battle After Another, like in theaters recently, and they say the R word in that movie several times. And I have noticed this sort of like its soft relaunch back into culture.
Yeah,
and seeing how it's getting normalized again. Because I felt so uncomfortable when I saw that movie, and I could hear people in the theater like laughing. And it's weird, this like sense of like conservative ideals that are like slowly being brought back in a way that is like really disheartening.
I've been thinking about this a lot. It used to be that people were very afraid of being exposed for being viewed as a bad person for whatever reason, because they were afraid of the public opinion and the public backlash, and they were also afraid of what it would do to their bottom line. And now we've had several years of people being bad and being horrible in public, and turns out there was a large enough contingent of people that were like, I also wanted the freedom to be horrible and racist and say terrible shit. So like public opinion no longer matters to these people, and it's not affecting their bottom line. And we were kind of only being held together like ethically by there were going to be repercussions for being a bad person. And then enough people did it and didn't have any repercussions that it made everybody sort of be like, huh. And the people who actually care about not doing bad things are now too tired to fight back. So welcome to my dissertation on living in hell. Anyway, speaking of living in hell. Great segue. Eric Tao in this golf outfit, hanging out with these two
his Kangol hat.
Hanging out with these two octogenarians on the golf course. And they're waving to somebody. I
lost it.
My mind. This was crazy. This was one of the smartest things I've seen on television recently.
I know.
At first you're like, wait, who is that? And then they don't need much. They just need the essentials. You see that little red hat and that overall disgusting
the white polo.
Yeah, the white polo. You just see it and you know immediately what's going on.
I can smell the McDonald's from my living room.
It's like an evil Sunday in the Park with George, like this horrible little Seurat painting of like Sunday in the Park with Donald.
I feel like a lot of shows are like not going to engage with this directly. You know what I mean? Like they're like they're not going to address the elephant in the room. I mean, even watching the Golden Globes last night, I was really frustrated because there was no mention of like a lot of the horrible things that we are currently grappling with, and it's like that it's hard to ignore. And so to see a show like this sort of like really directly acknowledge the horrifying existence that we're in, I was like, God, that's why this show is like, I really appreciate that how fearless this show is, like at attacking some of these things very head on that I think a lot of people are nervous to talk about.
There's people waiting behind Eric and these dudes, and you can hear them saying he shouts fake news and the ball disappears.
Because it's a reminder of, because where we left Eric was that they gave him the $20 million severance. So
correct.
We'd have no idea. So it seems like he's not working with anyone right now. He's just playing golf.
He is attempting to retire in some sort of country club community. Eric is also trying to do the New York Times crossword, and Harper calls him, and it turns out that Lily Lara is actually related to Eric. It is like Eric's...
Is it named after his daughter?
His daughters, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So it's his company, and he's like, I'm not managing that anymore like some other guy is, because I retired. But, a gating at 30 years old, like, that's bad. Because apparently, like, a gating of a fund is like a death knell. And Harper...
Oh, the shot. It was so beautiful.
I know. This hat on her, like, amazing balcony, looking up at the sky, saying, Otto killed my vision. This was just an interesting turn for Harper, that we see her so excited, like rubbing her hands together, like, ooh, I'm finally going to get to like do what I want to do. And then a year later, it seems like
a man always gets in the way.
And then unexpectedly, she offers to maybe team up with Eric Tao. We are maybe getting the toxic duo back together. He's definitely intrigued by this idea. We find out that Eric has been sleeping with, looks like maybe a neighbor. We're not sure of what the situation is. And Harper like clocks that and is like, huh, interesting. And then of course Eric is like, hey, she likes me. It's not just like an arrangement.
Yeah.
But Eric is like, don't, you've had a long day. Like, don't say things you don't mean about us working together potentially. And Harper knows exactly what the fuck she's doing. She knows exactly who Eric Tao is and says, retirement must be heaven on earth. And on the surface, you're like, oh, she sounds envious. But she knows what she's saying to Eric. She knows that Eric's probably hating retirement and that this is going to, like, provoke him to come see her.
Yep. Oh, God.
Our boys are out at dinner, and I just had to take a screenshot of this because, like, the amount of, like, stupid startup culture speak that's going on in this show. And he says, to think it all started importing dupe Bape hoodies from Pyongyang. Bape is a bathing ape, which is a Japanese streetwear company. So it seems like when these guys were young and just getting started, that's what they were up to make their money. And, you know, they ended up birthing a platform to reroute porn payments. And this killed me. He's drinking a martini, and then he orders his next martini and says, bone dry, cold as space. Thanks. I can't. Jonah mentions again that Whitney has been going to Africa all the time because he's working on some business deal there. And Jonah says, I want to get rid of the crowd, aka Ferdinand, who is actually Austrian. And Whitney's like, we can't get rid of him. Not showing his hand that he's actually kind of in cahoots with Ferdinand.
I know. And I was like, this is like the Last Supper.
It is. He once again says, we can't be a bank. Whitney's about to leave. The hits just keep coming with this guy. He says, I'm going to keep the tab open because a dysmorphic TikToker from Stockholm is going to slide into that seat. And Whitney's like, you really shouldn't come in hungover tomorrow because he knows something bad's about to happen. Mm-hmm. And he says, I have nothing to go home to. So we do find out that this man is either divorced or separated or I don't know exactly what, but his personal life is as messy as his life in the office. Whitney says, I love you. And Jonah says, I love you. And yeah. Okay, so we are at Yaz's party finally. Whitney approaches Harper and Harper's like, you know who I am? Like, what? And of course Yaz comes in looking fabulous and is like, oh, so glad to bring you two together. Looking fabulous, looking like all is well. Full socialite. She's got a Vogue photographer at her little gathering. We're having dinner. Jennifer Bevan is there. And Whitney's like, how did you two become friends? And it turns out, like, Henry, I think, ran against Jennifer for whatever office she's holding, which is it said
minister for industry.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Back. Yeah.
And Henry ran against her, which is just hilarious. And Yaz invited her over for a tea to sort of like get back on good terms after the election. And she says, and we like a gab, don't we? Man, now that Yaz's main job is to just be Lady Muck, she is killing it. She's pulling all the strings. She's making all the connections. Like, Henry's not doing a goddamn thing. Yaz is like fully stepping into this role of like, if I'm not going to like officially work in business, I will be working in the business of like social climbing. It just also makes me sort of sad though, because the first 3 seasons she really tried. She tried to resist it and it just did not work out. And she of course pipes up because she's using this opportunity to her advantage. Henry might be working with Whitney soon. She's really, really trying to make that happen. And Whitney's like, I'd love to meet him. They haven't even met. And Yaz is like, you should come and visit once Henry shakes off this cold, which is why he's not here. He has a cold. I don't know. Sounds like a lie. And of course, Yasmin then also pipes up because she has a direct line to Lord Norton of like, remember Jennifer, like, I have a direct line to the press. Under the guise of a nice dinner, we're all just doing deals. This was kind of hot, I won't lie to you. Whitney saying, you want to come home with me? And Harper saying, didn't we decide that a long time ago? And this was crazy! I did not know that Haley had been there the whole time. They really set us up to, like, all of a sudden, Haley just, like, pops up out of the ether. She's been with him the entire time because she's his assistant. This is so Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah, I mean, that is unfortunately, like, executive assistant life. Like, it is this weird thing. It's like your life comes secondary to the person that you're assistant to. And, like, you're in, like, things that you wouldn't think are in your job description. They are. It's just, it's a wild culture.
There is no amount of money I could do that for. And she takes her shot. I'm assuming that this is not true. I'm assuming this was just a way for her to talk about it. She says, the girl that I replaced is looking for a reference. And Whitney's immediate reaction is like, is she? Huh. And she's like, what happened to her, by the way? And he doesn't want to say it first and then just decides like, she had Crohn's, which rude to people with Crohn's. And so he mentions like that he like was paying her to like go private so that she could deal with her illness, which seems like a big fat lie. Oh my God. So Harper and Whitney break his bed while having sex. And then and he's like, do you want to return the favor? Go in the walk-in closet, bottom right, black box. I knew what was about to happen.
We knew.
I knew immediately what was about to happen. But it happens. Her face when she opens this box, and then of course she says, I guess this still purports to be a free country. Like, why not? Harper puts the strap-on on, and she looks at herself in the mirror.
And she loves it.
She loves it. She, once again, had to censor it. The graph is going down and out now. In the morning, she gets a call from this Finn Digest reporter that we saw at the beginning, and he says he found her through her gating email and says, you have been looking at the wrong company. It's not Siren. And we are to infer that he means you should be looking at Tinder. And of course, we get an ominous look from Whitney watching Harper on this phone call as she's talking to this guy, and we know shit's about to go down. Harper comes home from her walk of pegging and sees who on her doorstep but Eric Tao waiting for her because he doesn't want to chase pleasure anymore. He wants to do business. They're gonna figure it out. Eric is seeming a little uneasy. It's almost like he is out of practice and is saying like, when you're getting to the end of it, meaning, you know, I mean, he's like 55 years old, but men who are 55 think they're at the end of their lives. He starts to say, like, the thing that's most important, and then Harper interrupts him and says, it's money. And then he just kind of brushes it off and is like, yeah, money, but something's going on with him. I don't know exactly what it is.
Well, it's probably, I mean, if we think about in the season before, what was his name that died?
Oh, Bill Adler. Yeah.
Bill Adler.
Yeah.
Like, thinking about, like, because he was young, and then it's all as quickly as, you know, Eric used everything against him and his diagnosis. He was gone. And it's like, I'm sure that's like messed with Eric more than he's willing to let on.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Okay. So Harper says she wants her name on the door. Eric also wants his name on the door. I think we are about to enter the era of Tao Stern or Stern Tao.
For as long as it actually lasts for. I don't give it more than 2 episodes.
No, these two working together is really interesting because he was her mentor. They had a very toxic relationship. They have both stabbed each other in the back several times over. Also, there's like a light sex vibe clouding everything.
There's like a kink, a power
like,
kink.
I've always kind of felt like, I hope that these two don't end up hooking up, but like the odds are not 0 that they could. I mean, we'll see. I'm sure it's going to be a goddamn fucking mess.
Yeah.
But they're going to feel like it's going to be awesome. Oh boy. The next scene is really, really painful. Jonah's in the elevator with Whitney and is like, oh, I was so drunk. I was sober again. Not great. They get out of the elevator and Whitney tells him, remember, I wanted to spare you this indignity. But did he? The board has met without telling Jonah, and they are going to fire him as the CEO. The reasons that they list are many, but include persistent state of intoxication on company premises, misuse of company funds, and the example they give is somewhere called the Playpen, which I can only assume was like a strip club of some sort in Los Angeles. Uses his own words against him by saying that like he is smelly in the office, which is just such insult to injury in an already awful situation. Whitney will not look at Jonah. Jonah screams at him to look at him, and he says, I haven't seen you for some time. I don't recognize you. I don't know. The way things have been going in this episode, I think it's Whitney's the one who changed, not Jonah. I think Jonah has always probably been this way. But yeah, it is bleak.
This is Mark Zuckerberg and Andrew Garfield.
Yes, Andrew Garfield running in. Justin Timberlake is there. He's pissed. Oh, God. I love The Social Network. Believe it or not, we haven't seen the bleakest thing in this episode because the bleakest thing is Sir Henry Muck crushing pills between his boot and a harpsichord.
Which, and I have to say, is it foreshadowing that he's going to play Harper later? The harpsichord.
I know. The harpsichord was interesting because Harper is, Eric often calls her harpsichord. This is like Kurt Cobain meets Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, because I believe, based on the other paraphernalia, that this is heroin.
We talked about was it the end of the last season where he like shared a needle and he was like, I don't know if I have AIDS or HIV.
Yeah.
So that's like, we can infer that Henry is not well.
Not doing great. The saddest man who ever lived, playing a harpsichord that has a sign next to it that says "Do not play" and a velvet rope. He's clearly like wandering his giant estate in his bathrobe, strung out, playing the saddest little sonata. So yeah, that's how the episode ends, with Henry Muck looking like strung out Linus.
I know.
His piano.
And Lucy's gonna come in at any moment, aka Yaz, and yell at him like to get his shit together.
To take a goddamn shower. My overall thoughts, we are so back, baby. Like this is
I know.
Ooh, industry at its absolute finest. Some other things I did want to mention though is like the American Psycho thing with the New Order song. Obviously, cocaine has always been a big part of industry, but like we had other things going on, like 80s Redux, Newt Gingrich. Like there was a lot of the 80s happening. And so I feel like part of what is being said about what's going on in the show and also like what's going on currently, like financially, politically in like America and the UK is like something to do with going back to the 80s. Now, I'm not super well versed in like financial and governmental history, but the 80s were known for being a time of like excess and recklessness and certainly less progressive social values than we have today. I think we're saying something here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if we get like a Roy Cohn reference like in the next few episodes, who was like behind... if you haven't seen The Apprentice, that's essentially who it's about. Jeremy Strong plays Roy Cohn. I did read in the interview I read in Deadline, the next episode is going to heavily focus on Yasmin and Henry because we really didn't get much of the two of them. So it's like basically going to be, I think, a bottle episode about their relationship and like what to expect. So I'm very curious to see what that's going to be. Like probably a marriage story on Blow. So I can only imagine the trauma that we have on our horizon. But
I can't wait.
The show really does such a good job, I think, of balancing the amount of characters that they're like in plot lines that they're balancing. It doesn't feel like they're struggling with any of it. It feels like each one gets the amount of like weight and presence that it deserves. So I'm curious to see what powder keg is about to explode before the end of episode 2 even, probably. And like I just really don't know what to expect, and I really love that about this show.
Yeah, same. Thank you for joining us for this recap. We will see you again next week after the next episode of Industry. We will also see you for a live Traders recap on Thursday evening. So get ready for that. Get your cloaks out. And yeah, otherwise, we love you. Thanks for being here, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.